Hey, this is Freddie Bitondo. I'm going to speak about chapter 18. It's the final chapter to our class, and I really enjoyed the class. I really enjoyed all the terms and learning objectives that we learned. And like every chapter that we did, this is another chapter that I enjoyed. And in this case, I have the pleasure to give you a presentation about it as well. So in this chapter, we talked about exchange rates. Exchange rates is how you compare one currency in terms of another country's currency. In this example, I said how much is $1 in franc CFA. Franc CFA is the currency that we use in Africa. As you can see, this is business casual in Africa, and I felt like I want to show you how it is. And this is exchange rate. Exchange rate is one of the biggest, or is the biggest financial markets in the world as of now. And you can see the quotations, all that kind of stuff in Wall Street Journal. Also, you can see it in the news, and it's everywhere. You use it in everywhere. Me personally, I'm a student, and I like to buy clothes, for example. And I use quotation to buy clothes because sometimes you buy clothes from China, India, and all that kind of stuff. So there's two types of quotation. There's indirect quotation and direct quotation. Indirect quotation is currency quotation in the foreign exchange that express the valuable amount of foreign currency required to buy or sell a fixed unit in the domestic currency. Direct quotation is when the 1 unit of foreign currency is expressed in terms of the domestic currency. So $1 per yen, or yen in terms of dollar, for example. There's two types of transaction. First, the spot trade. Spot trade transaction is trade or asset transaction and delivered immediately. So basically, you do a trade in the foreign exchange, and it happens immediately. There's also the forward trade, which is there's an agreement between two traders or a buyer and a seller that agrees on a date when the trade is gonna happen, but it's gonna be in the forward date. It's not gonna be right now. It's gonna be later on. And sometimes it can be unethical because they do some stuff in between and the business, The second question would be the second thing I'm gonna explain is the purchasing power parity, which is PPP. What is PPP? PPP compare the purchasing power of multiple countries to one another. You can use to compare countries that use different exchange rates. For example, I put this, but for example, if you want to see how much I don't know, this hat that I have right here, how much this hat costs, for example, in China. This is purchasing power parity of, or how much I put it right here, which country sells the cheapest coffee. This is PPP, And then there's two types of PPP. There's absolute purchasing parity, which is product costs the same even if it has a different currency in another country. And there's the relative purchasing power parity, which is the change in the exchange rate over time. For the absolute purchasing power parity in the text, they give us an example. For example, it was like, for that to work completely, the transaction cost, the shipping, the insurance, the polish, and everything else must be to zero. And there's no barriers like taxes, tariff, or political barriers that should be in place as well when you're in absolute power parity. But if and then we talk about the interest rate parity as well. The interest rate differential between two countries is the same to the differential between the forward exchange rate and the spot exchange rate that we already talked about. One interesting theory was the international Fisher effect, which is the difference between the exchange rate of two currencies that is almost equal to the other country's nominal interest rate. The IFE, which is the international Fisher effect, give us the idea that countries with lower interest rate can experience lower level of inflation It can also help increase the value of that currency when you compare it to other nations as well. What is the exchange rate risk? The short run exposure, which is the fluctuation into day-to-day operation. This is you can happen a lot of times because in the exchange rate market and currencies in general, it changes a lot. Day to day can be minute to minute, it changes a lot. So this is a risk. In the short run when you invest, it's definitely a risk. There's also the long run exposure, which is unanticipated changes. You will not know. I mean, you don't anticipate changes, and these changes happens in the long run. This is a risk as well. Translation exposure is translate from one currency into another country currency. This is a risk because you have to know a lot of stuff. You have to know how to translate correctly, for example, a dollar to a yen, or how the yen can translate to US dollars. And when you do it in the balance sheet, you have to balance it properly. Or else you're gonna have false results, and it's gonna give you a faulty balance sheet, and this is a risk as well. Then the last that I'm gonna talk about is political risk. Political risk, like I said, I'm from Africa and everything, and I'm sorry about that. As I put here that it's changes that happens because of the events in the political world. For example, some change in U.S. tax laws can benefit some firm and hurt another. It can happen nationally, internationally. In Africa, for example, there's a lot of countries that come to Africa because history reveals that maybe Africa got some problem with the president. Let's say France, for example, come to the country and they take advantage of that to take businesses or natural resources that we have in the country. It hurts the country, it hurts, for example, let's say, I don't know, it's Congo. It hurts Congo, but it benefits France because they took advantage of that. And it happens a lot in Africa, and this is a good example of a political risk. It's a good example of how it can affect a country or even a continent. So it's very important to notice that. It's very important to be aware of that and act accordingly. Well, thank you for this presentation. I hope I gave you insights on exchange rate, PPP, and just risk in general. And I really appreciate this class, and thank you for everything.